What if I told you that you can turn a boring and standard chord progression like this into something far more colorful and interesting like this? Hey everybody, Xander here. Welcome to my channel Learning Music Skills, the place where I talk about all kinds of music topics for becoming a better songwriter, producer and musician. If this video was useful to you, please consider liking and subscribing so you will not miss my next video as well. Quickly, before I start, everything that I talk about today in this video can be used in any genre or any style of music. And also, if you don't read notes, don't worry, because all the examples will also be in MIDI, so anybody who wants can tag along. So, what are inversions actually, and why would you even consider them using in your compositions or productions? If you stick around, I'll tell you why this is such a great thing to use in your music. To start off, when you play a regular chord, the root note is always in the bass. Just check it out. Sounds good, right? But I wouldn't be making this video if there was not something more to be discovered. The trick of the day is that the root note does not always have to be in the bass. Okay, so let's dive right into it. Here we have a C chord in root position, and the tones that we have here are C, E, G. When a chord is in root position, that means that the root note, which in this case is C, is in the bass, or is the lowest note. So what about if we want a different note to be in the bass? To do this, we need to transpose the C an octave up, and now the E, which is the major third of the chord, is the lowest note. This is called the first inversion. But we don't have to stop here. If we transpose the E an octave up, then the G, which is the perfect fifth of the C chord, is now the bass note. And when the fifth is in the bass, so when it is the lowest note, we call this the second inversion. Now that we know what inversions are, we have reached the next level. Now we're going to try and find out how we can use them in our own chord progression. Here's the chord progression that you've heard before. Pretty standard, right? Let's take a closer look at how the bass notes move. We can see that every chord is in root position, and there are quite a few jumps going on. Let's see if we can make this bass line a little bit smoother. Let's leave the first chord as is, so we will leave the C in the bass. But let's take a closer look at our next chord, which is the G major. We can see that it has a G, a B, and a D. What if we use the first inversion? That means that the B will be our bass note. Well, as you can see, now that will make a bass line from C to B to A. So that creates a nice connection from the C to the A minor chord. Let's have a listen. And this was a nice example of a descending bass line. But let's see if we can also make an ascending bass line. So again, I'm going to leave the C major for what it is. So the C is again in the bass. But now we're going to use the second inversion of the G major chord. And that brings us the D as a bass note. So now we're moving a step up from C. Now if I look at the A minor chord, we see that the fifth of A minor is an E. We could use that one as well. Now we're making a stepwise progression from C to D to E, and eventually, just a half step up, we're at F major. And that would sound like this. I especially like this last example. And because of this ascending bass line, it really carries some extra tension with it, and you really feel that it's going to somewhere. And what I really like is that it brings out a different character in this chord progression. We can also make a mixed progression and change the bass line even further. I mean, it doesn't always have to be an ascending line or a descending bass line. So let's take a look. And for this one, I want to be a little bit more adventurous. So I'm going to start the C in its first inversion. So that means that the E will be the bass note. Then I'm going to continue with one step down, and that will give us the G major, but in its second inversion. So we have the D as the bass note. And then I'm going to play the E, but this time it's going to be the fifth of the A minor. So that brings us to the second inversion of A minor. And then I'm going to end the chord progression again on F major. The bass line would sound like this. So the chord progression will sound like this. Let's take it even a small step further. We're going to start the C again on the first inversion, the G major again in the second inversion, and the A minor also again on the second inversion. But now I'm going to end in the first inversion of F major. So that means that A is going to be our bass note in the F major chord. And if I would play it as a bass line, it would sound like this. Sounds quite nice, doesn't it? Let's hear it, what it sounds like with the chords together. Okay, maybe that F major in its first inversion sounds a bit strange near the end, but I'm trying to show you that you can really think outside of the box when you're dealing with inversions. You can really create some beautiful colors in your chord progression. So now you must be thinking, okay, Xander, thank you for the info, but the question still remains, why and how should I use this? There are many reasons why I would recommend you to even just consider using an inversion here or there. First of all, chords in their root position are very stable and consonant, while the inversions are less stable. And we can confirm this by looking at the intervals that they're made of. In the root position, we see a third and a perfect fifth. But if we look at the first inversion, we have a third and a sixth. And if we look at the second inversion, we have a perfect fourth and a sixth. So these intervals are not as consonant as the third and a perfect fifth. So inversions, they have a different sonority and are less stable. In music, we find that when things are less stable, it creates a feeling to progress. It creates motion. It wants to resolve to something stable again. Inversions give you the possibility of creating a smooth bass line. Sometimes you just want to connect certain chords with each other in one smooth bass line. This is just simply impossible when you're always dealing with chords in their root position. As I mentioned before, inversions have their own unique sonority. You can use an inversion as a separate identity. What I mean by that is that when you have a chord progression, maybe every now and then, or maybe even just once, you can replace a normal chord with an inversion. That will really spice things up, and that will be a quite refreshing surprise, I guarantee you. And remember, the most important thing of all is inversions give you the possibility of making variations. You don't always have to play the same chord progression over and over and over again until you and your audience gets bored. So why not use an inversion just to create some variation, make your bass player happy and everybody happy. There are so many more ways to utilize chord inversions, but it's just simply too much for one video. So I'll leave that for the next one. But for now, I think you're good to go and have enough options to explore new possibilities. Have you already tried improving your chord progressions with inversions? Or maybe you know some good examples from a band or from a famous singer-songwriter? Let me know, drop them in the comments. Also, if you have any video requests or topic requests, let me know as well. And until then, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time.